back up to Ezekiel, the 6th chapter. Because again, if Israel got scattered to the four winds, and he got to start this process where they are scattered at the four winds, in bondage. See, the process is starting now. Ezekiel 6. That's why all of a sudden we gradually waking up. It's a slow process. You got a whole lot of brothers know they Israel, but they still don't understand the whole magnitude of it. It's just like we trying to preach to wake people up saying they Israel, and we turn around, we had to argue with some more Israelites about some nonsense, about stuff that they can't prove. We trying to tell people the majority of Israel don't even know they Israel. We trying to tell them, but we had to turn around and get a knife out our back from some other Israel that know they Israel, arguing about some nonsense. So, but the process is starting. Ezekiel 6 and verse 8. Go ahead.
Yet will I leave a remnant, that ye may have some that shall escape the sword among the nations.
See, he always said there's going to be a remnant. That's why he couldn't destroy us utterly, he said. He going to destroy us from being a nation. We died and got scattered to the four winds, but he always had in mind, I got to save some. He had his eye on some. I'm going to save some of them. See, that's why we are here to this day. With all that we've been through, we really could have been annihilated if it don't be for the Lord. But he said it here, I will save some and make sure that they escape from the sword. How can, with all the stuff we've been through, we still alive because the Lord said it so he can bring us back? Escape the sword among the nations. Go ahead.
When ye shall be scattered through the country.
When you shall be scattered through the country, I'm going to save some. And what you going to do? Verse 9.
And they that escape of you shall remember me among the nations, whither they shall be carried captive.
Oh, see, you got carried captive, right? And that's where you at when you start to learn something, right? See, the process is starting now. He said, and they that escape of you shall remember me among the nations. That means you had totally forgot, didn't you? You didn't have a clue. You didn't know who you was. You didn't know who God was. But God had it planned all along that you was going to remember. You had forgot everything. See, the process is starting now. He said, and they that escape of you shall remember me among the nations, whither they be carried captive. See, this is the predicament Israel got to be in. This is how you know the real Israel. Their middle name got to be slavery. That's what he's talking about, carried captive. That's what that means, right? The people that say they Jews ain't been carried captive nowhere. Nowhere. So, who is he talking about? The real Israel. That have died and he scattered to the four winds. He said they're going to remember me among the nations, whither they shall be carried captive. Go ahead.
Because I am broken with their whorish heart, which have departed from me, and with their eyes, which go a-whoring after their idols.
See, he said, I'm broken with their whorish heart, because we've been worshiping lies and falsehood since the old days, and we still doing it now. Go ahead.
And they shall loathe themselves for the evils which they have committed in all their abominations.
See, and that's when you get some understanding. That's what you start to do. Now, let's go to Deuteronomy 30. Because he said they're going to remember me. That means you was totally lost. You lost your identity, lost everything, and now we starting to wake up. That's why they ain't even no accident. A lot of brothers and sisters, they don't even know why. Everybody want to have locks now. Because they starting to remember something even though they don't know nothing. Deuteronomy 30. I mean, you go back, really, 20 years ago, very few people was talking about having locks. That was looked at as something shameful still. That was looked down on. Now everybody and their auntie got locks. It was about 20 years ago, I told Loretta I was thinking about getting locks. She thought I was crazy. She she did her nose up like that, like, what? She'll tell you. And now she got it. Because it was looked down on. But now, Deuteronomy 30:1. But he said, you're going to remember me. You're going to remember who you are and who your God is. 30:1. Go ahead, because he told he's going to put us under a curse and scatter us all over, but then he told us something else. 30:1. Go ahead.
And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse.
See, he talked about being blessed, but we read about the curses. You can't omit them. And at the end of all this, once you've been blessed, we was blessed for a moment into the promised land. Then you got cursed and you died, got scattered out to the four winds. So now you under the curse. So now at the end of the curse, which we at the end of it now, because it's time for us to remember the Lord. Go ahead.
Which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations.
Oh, that's the same thing as remember me among the nations, right? That's identical. See, Ezekiel told you, Moses telling you. He said, you're going to remember me. The ones that escape, I'm going to save some that's going to remember me among the nations. He said, here, after the blessing and the curse, you're going to call it to mind among the same thing. You got this all over the Bible. Go ahead.
Whither the Lord thy God have driven thee.
And that's who done drove you where you at. He was the cab driver. That's how you got into slavery. Go ahead.
And shall return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day. Thou and thy children with all thine heart and with all thy soul.
See, that's why we're here on the Sabbath day, because that's what the Lord commanded. That's why we're doing everything else that we can do to turn back to the Lord and keep his commandments accordingly. Go ahead. Then once you do that, you remember the Lord, you call it to mind, you turn back to him, which is what we're doing. We on the brink of this, which is when the dry bones will rise up. Verse 3.
That then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity.
Oh, he still got to turn your captivity. He got to bring you from slavery. See, this is the part when Israel is going to rise, when they leave slavery. We at the beginning of this now, because right now we starting to call it to mind. We starting to remember the Lord where we at. He said, but that then the Lord thy God will turn your captivity. Go ahead.
And have compassion upon thee. And will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee.
See, he's going to gather you from all the nations. Well, that's what we read about the dry bones. He said he's going to send for the four winds and breathe upon these slain they may live, and they're going to come back. He said, I'm going to bring you out of your graves, but he didn't say take you up to heaven nowhere, did he? He said, I'm going to bring you out of your graves in Ezekiel 37, we read it, and take you where? Into your own land, into the land of Israel. That's where he said. Your grave is where you at now, in captivity. You died and you in a grave in slavery somewhere, buried away, don't even know who you are. But we started to remember. See, so the dry bones is Israel, a dead people, but we on the brink now. We on the brink. We about to arrive. And this is going to be the most magnificent thing God has done. He said the Lord is going to turn your captivity, gather you from all the nations. Go ahead.
Whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee.
Where he hath scattered you. Go ahead, verse 4.
If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee.
He said, wherever you at, you can be scattered to the outmost parts of the world. That's what heaven is talking about on the earth. The outmost. Remember, you went to the four winds of heaven. He told you. He said, if you'll be driven out to the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from there will he fetch you. Go ahead.
And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed.
Oh, you're not going to heaven. You're going to the land, because you're coming out of that grave. You starting to remember, and then the Lord said, He gonna put that sinew and all that on you. So that's the part of you turning back to the Lord, starting to do his will. He putting flesh on you. He putting sinews on you. He putting his spirit back in you to bring you back to life. And then he said, I'm going to bring you out of captivity, back to your land, out of that grave. Verse 5 said, the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed. Go ahead.
And thou shalt possess it.
Now it's your turn to get it. Your fathers had it. They blew it. Now you're going to have it forever. Go ahead.
And he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy father.
Above your father. Now let's go to Matthew 24.